Test 1, 2. Right, hello everybody. Welcome to Q&A and Critique number 48 here in Arendale's Discord server. We're currently here in the work arena and Q&A and Critique chat, and I'm about to start to share my screen. So today's an exciting day because we have Slinc's art to take a look at, which is an interesting piece with some vines and some buildings. So Slinc has been one of our regular art submitters over the many months that we've been doing these. So Slinc, I'm very happy. I'm also just a quick reminder, this is the third to last Q&A here in Arendale's Discord server. But never fret, I will be moving to the B4Artist community to grow that community there. So thank you everyone for being here for this whole time, who have been regulars every week, and for keeping the questions and the art flowing. It has been excellent. Hopefully we can continue elsewhere, or also maybe someone else can pick these up here in Arendale's Discord server also. So today we've got a topic about a showcase that Yuseff and TT helped me in the feedback channel here in the Discord server, because I've been working on a Painterly project. I'm currently rendering overnight. Yesterday I worked till like 5 in the morning after a 2-hour nap around midnight, and I've been rendering like crazy, and one of these shots had a lot of difficulties. So the shot is now finally rendered, so I can showcase how it finished, and we can go through some of the tips and techniques of how to improve a shot. If you think something is not working, what is the thought process that we have to help improve a shot? So after reviewing Slinc's art, we're going to take a look at this piece of art, and then I will show you a sneak peek of what's coming out tomorrow from the EP and the similar to an LP of this music art that I've been creating. First of a few official releases. This has been a accumulation of nearly 6 months of work, and it is just the beginning of much, much more. So I hope you guys are ready. As always, feel free to open up your microphones if you would like to ask questions or answer questions in a polite way. You can also write in the Q&A critique, and I will be keeping my eyes open to see what you're writing. So Slinc has 2 pieces, so let's start there. So Slinc, how are you? How's your internet today? And would you like to come up onto the microphone?
Hello there.
Hello, yes, I can hear you fine. Great.
Very nice. I'm doing well here. And you?
Ah, good. Not so bad for the lack of sleep, actually. So let's take a look at your piece of art. So I wanted to ask you, we have 2 pieces, right? We've got this piece here,
yes,
which we are going to review. And we also have kind of like an emoji that you created.
Yeah.
Which is also an excellent piece to take a look at here. With a mustache. So which piece would you like to take a look at first? And also, could you give us a little tour?
I don't know, maybe the Blender one first?
Excellent. All right. So today we have a Blender character in a top hat with a mustache and a monocle as the center of the Blender logo.
Yeah.
Quite nice.
Yes.
And a great looking mustache.
It is procedural. Ah!
Wait, the whole thing's procedural?
Not the whole thing, but the mustache.
Wow.
The mustache is.
How did you make the mustache?
Well, I did it in geometry nodes with a curve to control the shape of the mustache. And then with some scaling, like setting the radius of the curve, I got it like into this shape. Then I instanced like a few many hairs and use a hair shader.
Gotcha. So this is rendered in cycles, I assume?
Yes.
to get the hair shader, because I know the hair BSDF does not work so well inside Eevee, as far as I know.
I am not even sure if it is working in Eevee at all.
Yeah, exactly. But it looks very nice, and you modeled the top hat as well.
Yes.
Cool. So what was the motivation of this piece? What's the context? I saw this
I saw
morning.
this image online. Just this blender and Sir Blender.
Right, let me just copy and paste. There it is.
It is Sir Blender.
You decided to recreate it in 3D.
Yes.
Oh, nice. All right, guys. So what do you think? Do you think the reference is he's hitting the reference? I kind of liked your improvement with your you using the tendrils of the logo as part of his hair that holds the hat. Meanwhile, here it's only implied. You got the molecule pretty well. The general concept was quite good. So, do you think you're going to submit this as one of the emojis inside the current competition or the emoji competition or challenge that we have here in the server? But I think that challenge changed.
Yeah, it changed.
It's finished.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But I maybe can ask Aaron if he adds it.
Sure, I guess we can. Better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right, cool. My only small critique that I recommend is notice that the moustache hair is very stocky, very like short and thick. Meanwhile, here even though your silhouette is nicer, it's missing that stockiness, the kind of stocky feel. Another thing that they did with the eyes, that the molecule was kind of hanging on an eyelid and showing underneath the eye a little bit. It could be the refraction. You have this a little bit, but maybe you could increase the index of refraction of the glass a little bit to bring out that shape a bit more. It's very small.
Yeah.
That's about it, really. Looks nice. And also maybe the material on the hat could be. Is this like a plastic?
It is a very simple material.
I gotcha.
Slapped on.
Mikey says it's very nice. I agree. It's a funny one. Oh, well, hopefully it becomes an emoji. We'll see if we can. I'll ask Aaron about this. So your next piece here, Slinc, is one that you've been working on throughout the whole week. I've been noticing you've done a number of different works in progress, and I've also noticed that you have also had some issues with the compositing and the leaves.
Yes.
I also remembered that you used Bagapie to make the vines to some degree.
Yes.
And you were also trying out another system for creating the mountains. Was it Gaia? Am I correct?
Yes. I used Gaia for the mountains in the back.
It's really nice. So everybody here, those who are watching, what do you think? So I just want a little bit of context on the piece. What inspired you to make these old, rusty, abandoned skyscrapers?
There's like a challenge on another Discord where it's like a modern city, but it's like run down. Old modern city. Probably. Yeah. I wanted to do something for challenge, and then I made this.
Nice.
Should I say something?
Yeah, if you'd
Maybe.
like to.
So, in my opinion, I think the materials and everything is pretty neat, actually. Like the way the light bounces off the grass and just the buildings in general. But what I don't like about it is, first of all, the composition. I think the center of it is completely empty, and like there's not much to cling to with your eye. So I think there should be if there was some sort of spaceship in the top right corner, or just like I don't know, maybe could be just a branch of a tree or something in the foreground. That would really help to set it, like have some sort of focus point. And I also think the mountains in the background are a bit too extreme. So I often see this sort of like mountains where people just really want to make a mountain and use a displacement or something. But I think if you want this to be realistic, you rarely see like pointy extreme mountains like this. Usually more flat.
Eroded would be the word.
Mm.
Those are good points. Like the
I
hero.
think it would be really fast to turn this around to make it even way better.
So Slinc, what do you think? Would you like us to take an even deeper look of how we could work the composition a little? Because you've got all the
Yes.
elements, you have the pieces, you have the Lego blocks, you've got some general quality going on. So now we just need to think of, okay, so what is your story? What is your hero? So before we answer that, I want to ask you, what kind of story do you want to tell? I know we have the abandoned city and things like that, but like, what is the hero of your image? What would you like the hero to be?
It's like a rundown.
Run down, an
Like
adjective.
if there
And
was like a modern civilian or something, and then it got destroyed or something, and now it's all run down, dry.
okay, so the civilian building could be the hero, this adjective that it is run down and abandoned. So here we have it to the far left, which is okay, but we can unfortunately have, what makes this a little bit difficult is the leading line here between these two other complementary buildings, and the mountain and the big sun, the sky, is fighting for attention. So you have a general basis, so let's just do a slight improvement just to get an idea. So I'm going to copy the image and I'm going to make a new one, clipboard, and create as web. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to duplicate the layer and I'm going to do some movement. So for example, if this is your key building here that we have, this building is pretty nice, maybe with the vines here. So this key building, I'm going to copy this and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it over a little bit. Right, so that it's not attached to the other building. So it's kind of framed into the other buildings. I'm also going to move it slightly to the center. Also, so that's the first thing that I would do. Another thing that I will just get some sky. Move it over here. Probably, sorry.
Yeah, creates more of a silhouette, right?
Exactly, it has a shape language. So this shape language is basically the idea of what you want to help you bring out the shape of your story, which is kind of like this tower is the shape of your story. But because the leading edge of the buildings were attached together, we notice that they are 3 buildings, but they're stuck together. So in this case, what we could do as well is like, okay, so because these buildings are stuck together, if we blur our eyes a little bit, we just see this as one blob of detail. Because there's one blob of detail, what we can do is we can take this blob and we can make it like a chunk like this, and we'll copy it and we'll use this blob of detail as the third tower, kind of like rotate it around, make it a lot smaller because it's far away in the distance, kind of like a leading edge like this. So now we have this concept here, and let me just get another brush, get the atmosphere color, and make this a bit more transparent. So now using the atmosphere and depth, we have a concept that one of the towers is really close and the other tower is in the center, and another tower is further away.
It also comes from the overlap. Like if you compare this to the original, on the right side of the tower, you don't really have any overlap. It's like the tower or the foreground ends exactly where the background starts in the original. So, and now with the overlap, you have more perspective.
That's right. You want depth. To create a story in your world, and especially in 3D, you want a concept of using depth and also hierarchy. For example, in this particular tower here, for example, the one up close, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also change the lighting a little bit of this tower up close so that it is now, whoops, Control L, it is now in the dark. Kind of in the shadow of the other tower, for example. That's something you could do, is you can work with your values so that the mid one, the big one, is the one that has more of attention, and this is more of a complement or a framing complement. Same with the mountains. What you could do is you could you can grab the mountains and you can use the mountains as part of the framing tool or device for your story, so that it can come out and helps the eyes crisscross and move into where I'm supposed to look, around here, for example. So I'll use this mountain to frame the other mountain or the other tower, which is in the light. And, whoops, I probably should copy and paste it and then move it. So you can use the mountains more of as a complement instead of something off to the side. You know, use it to help it frame what you want it to be. So in this case, I can use this. And now that I have this concept here, I can use that to bring out a different shape or a different language, I guess you could say, on the actual concept of what this world is and what it's supposed to be, what is it supposed to frame. And with that, I have a slightly better framing of what I want to do. So that, for example, if we take a look of your story of where you want to lead your eyes, you have a concept of 3 brothers. One of them is more wrecked than the others, and he's in the center and he's in the light. One of them is far away inside the atmosphere. He's also abandoned. But they're all alone. Everybody's alone in the city. And because everyone's alone in the city, the buildings stand alone in the sunlight, covered in foliage. Another thing you can do is you can take the same foliage and you can also use it in the foreground to bring out the framing of the idea, and so that you have an even more concept that things are overgrown, if you want. I mean, depends on your story, right? But this is what I would do. First things first is you want to work your silhouette, work your perspective with your depth, work with your framing, and last but not least, work on your directions. So for example, here's a direction, here's a direction, and notice that the directions are pointing to something, pointing to the lonely mountain, pointing, this is like this tower of a building is as abandoned as a mountain is, for example. So you tell a story of like a comparison of what you're trying to do with your art, and you can use your leading lines or your perspective lines and your silhouettes to communicate things. But you have a pretty good image. You got all the pieces there. It's looking good. But those are just some small things that you could do. What do you think, Slinc? Is this a bit overboard? Is it too crazy? Or does this help?
I think that helps.
Excellent. It's a tricky concept, I understand. Hashtag loose is deep. Oh, I like your emoji that you used in the server. Nice. So Slinc, excellent work. I like it. It's coming on. This is very similar to what I had to do with my work. Just yesterday, I was working on this particular piece. So let me just load up my preview. And let's load it up here. So I was working on this piece here, which I shared inside the feedback channel, inside of the server. So basically, the story of this piece is that I needed a robot sitting in trash on an industrial street in the light of a setting sun or something. because it's kind of the end of the night, and I want him to slowly turn off as if he's running out of a battery or something. So this was my first shot. The problem was I shared it with a number of different people, and many people could not understand this image. They couldn't see the robot. They didn't understand what was happening. They couldn't read the image. They couldn't read the story. My girlfriend did, barely, and some people who know the story of where I'm making this knew what I was doing, but those who had no context had no idea. This is what we call a problem of legibility or readability. So this shot needed a lot of improvement. So two people from here in the community, which I will mention, TT and Yuseff, both of them gave me some good advice, along with a number of other artists from other Discord servers as well. So thank you for your tips and your help, because with that, I developed some improvements. So the first improvement that we did with this concept was change the values and the colors, change the hue, and also change the composition a little. So in this case, I wanted my story to be a lot more central. So for example, the camera would rotate around the character. And I also noticed that because the robot is blue and yellow, I would have to use a color that would contrast heavily with the yellow color. So I changed the sunlight, instead of being orange, which is similar to the yellow, which requires a lack of hue contrast. So I changed the sunlight to be more of a blue or pink or purplish color. And with that, the entire world, and I also changed the global lighting so that it became a little more blue or greeny, so that the colors would contrast with the actual character. Another thing that I needed to improve was luminance. So when I was working with the luminance, I needed to also work on the values. So the values of the image required me to, for example, all the dark areas, I had to remove a lot of the light so that the shadows were darker, and also make the central part of the eye lighter. This is a technique that you use called a luminance contrast. So we have hue contrast and luminance contrast. Contrast is basically just a stronger difference in values. Make it less homogeneous. Make the colors pop on the monitor. So with the hue contrast and the luminance contrast, now we can start to see that we have a robot. And with that, I can start to work the story a bit more. And I started animating, this was before I did the color changes, but I started animating the shot. So now I have like some gobo drones flying in the shadows. I have his lights slowly turning off and the cars driving by to show some like coherent scale. And I also set up the layout a bit better. And with that, I've got the shot up and running, ready to be rendered now that the preview is done. And with the new lighting, finally, I added in some guard rays, and let me just load it up here. And here's the final render. So here it is turning on and off. So even with the light off, he's still in the light, as you can see with the screen. And he's kind of like, you can see his blue light is like his soul, his heart. And there's the car right there. And there is the final shot and the final renders with the painterly effect. Ready to be released tomorrow, shortly, with the music. So this is one of the shots. So this is the thought process that you need to think about always with your shots, is can it be read? I know I don't have a lot of detail with my painterly and it's very scratchy, it's very noisy, but if I work with better color or hue contrast and luminance contrast, you can improve the way the person sees the image. Same thing with composition. In this case, I have lines of the action of the car, the bright parts of the car, takes your eyes to the center of the world. Same thing with the lines. The lines are kind of pointing to him. So notice that the line of the bars point to him. These dark lines are trying to point to him. The guard rays are pointing to his face. Generally, there's a bar behind here. I have these two bars here. I have one that is complementary in the shadow, but I have one that is kind of pointing right above him to show his shot. The same concept is with the other shots that I did here. So for example, let me just load it up first. Sorry, this shot here. It's going to take a moment to load because they're 16-bit PNGs. There we go. So this shot has a similar story, but this shot is based on the concept of a party. So here he is, he's having a party, he's surrounded by people, he's framed. So same thing, TT gave me some good advice and a number of other artists, but the initial shot was something like this. So this is the initial shot right here. Let me just load it up. Here it is. So as you can see, the initial shot, even though I have the general idea clear, I had the same problem that I had earlier. Can you guys guess what this problem is? What's wrong with this image? How could we improve it?
I think in the center of it, there's just too much going on really. Can't really see any silhouette. Just like a pattern, basically.
That's right, you can't see a silhouette and there's only a pattern. That's the only thing you can see. That's quite right, you're correct, that's the problem. So in this case, I started playing around with, again, hue contrast. So he's a yellow robot, so I can use a different color like pink or blue or something to bring out his shape a bit better. But there's still a problem. So I improved the silhouette, I've changed the hue contrast. Now what? What's wrong with this shot? How could I improve it? So one of the issues here is like what I showed you Slinc earlier was basically if you want leading lines to show where I should look, you also need to use the concept of exactly that, a leading line. For example, I'm kind of trying to say outlining the object or pointing to it. Yes. Let's take a look. So here in the final shot, what I did is I pretty much removed attention from the people. And let me just frame the shot. There we go. So I removed the attention of the people. And I used, for example, if you take a look here on the top left, I added two lasers. One laser is up here on the left, another laser should be on the right. There it is. That point towards where he's standing. I added some spotlights. I changed the way the lights animate so that he's more in frame. And I repositioned the people so that the people has kind of like a dark black V shape around the character. So it's still taking a while. I probably need to free up this one here and close this. So let's take a look at one of the shots. Here we go. So this is basically what I did. So I used the framing of the shadows and the movement of the camera to kind of help people know where to look. Look at the character, look at the robot. So after some time, we started to go through the feedback and I changed the concept. I used the lines as well. I used this frame of this purple frame up here of this wall to kind of show where he's standing. I used the V shape of the shadows to show where the people are. And I also I changed the silhouette of the light so that it becomes a lot more clearer and brighter so that we have hue contrast, luminance contrast, and we have leading lines of complementary scenery, I guess you could say, to show where I am supposed to look. And with that, it helps people to read the message that there is a robot. He is kind of dancing like a robot with speakers sounding to the music, and people are dancing. The lights are moving around. It's a party scene. And this is the message that I wanted to give. He is a party robot. So, this is
Nice shot, man. I really like it.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah, nice comic book style. I like it.
This is going to be the de facto style of this entire series. Basically, on tomorrow, Friday, DG Unknown is releasing his music album, which is an EP, but it's basically 18 minutes of lo-fi hip-hop. So this music will be released tomorrow to YouTube and to his social networks and to Spotify and all the other areas. And you can also purchase the music and listen to it for free on YouTube. But basically, we've created this entire universe of like a cyberpunk sci-fi universe with a space opera, I guess you could say, based around the music. So he has a number of different albums coming out in the future, and all of the music has a cumulative story, including this album. So we're releasing this music tomorrow. So I'll just give you a quick preview, a sneak preview, so you guys can be ready for it to come out tomorrow. But basically, this robot, the first series of videos is about this robot. And this robot is created by the title of the album, which is called the Android Repair Workshop. So the Android Repair Workshop, he's a character that takes this robot and repairs him, or he has partly built him, and he's always wanted to be a DJ, music producer, but he's stuck inside the Android Repair Workshop as someone stuck in his job, as we all can identify with sometimes. So the album, the first releases of the album, starts with the story of the robot and how it is built. So I'm going to load up this song art and show you in the order.
Totally gave me Jet Set Radio vibes, if you're familiar with that.
Which vibes?
Jet Set Radio, it's like an old, I think, Dreamcast game.
Ah, cool.
It's really nice cell shading.
That's right. So here's the concept. So basically, this is the first release, and then after that, over the next few months, we're going to be releasing more videos of the entire city and the story of this particular character based on the music. So we're going to have a little competitions and get some things going up to see like what people can guess is happening, what's going to happen. It's just an introduction. Can't make it. That's okay. Maybe next time. Next week we've got 2 more sessions before it goes to another community. So here we have 12 songs. As you can see, the original idea is of this particular DJ Dex, but then he needs to think of it. He's stuck in a case of the Mondays, this DJ. So this song here has already been released. And this song here, She Her Bot, has already been released, so you can look it up. But we also have all the other songs ready to come out, ultimately to the point where the character practically comes off the page, becomes an actual animated character in the Painterly world, starts living in the Painterly world, has some problems, gets abandoned or broken, to the point that we show the complexity of the entire city and the stories that will come from the Android Repair Shop, which is the album being released. So it's been hard work. I've been rendering like crazy, but tomorrow you'll be able to see more, I suppose. So that's what I wanted to show you guys, definitely. So do you have some questions, or would you like to share some art that you guys have been working on? I wanted to ask you, this is what I have been working on. Oh look, you've already done some changes, Slinc. Nice. Let's just take a quick look.
Yeah, that's looking really good, Dre. Can't wait to see the videos.
Yeah, the first videos are just video loops, so they're not like full-on animations because that's 18 minutes of content. But the other videos will be full-on sequences of shots with stories. So we'll see how it goes. Oh, this is much better, Slinc. Look at that. Now we know who the hero is. This particular building that is attached by the other buildings to some degree by the vines. But is still abandoned. The one in the fire ground is nearly collapsing, sinking into the ground. Much better, Slinc. Don't forget to think of the simple shapes. You can always raise these plants at the bottom here a little bit because they feel like they're chopped off a little too much. So you could raise these buildings up a little bit so that the V shape comes in. But this is really nice, Slinc. Man, you're fast at applying the feedback. Yeah, these lines. Very cool. Yeah, just slowly bring it up a little bit like this. Very cool. The mist pass still hates you. Yeah, you're right. What I usually do, here's a technique. With my most recent shot that is currently rendering at the time, I had a problem with depth because the shot is really heavy. There's just a lot of detail. So if we take a closer look at my shot here, and I can give you a quick idea of how it works, is you can use fake depth to bring out your shots. Just give me a second as it loads. So to create fake depth, you can use, for example, an alpha plane instead of an actual mist pass or a volumetric pass. So for example, with this shot here in the city, you notice that the building that's in the light and the buildings in the background over here, the building in the light obviously is partially covered in the shadow. That's great, so that I can have some contrast. But then I use these, I use two flat planes to bring out the depth of the background, and I make these flat planes transparent to make it look like there's an atmosphere going on in the world from the paint. So for example, if you have difficulty with your depth pass or your mist pass in the compositing, or you could render out your depth by using just transparent planes, or even just using an Eevee Volumetrics with a holdout in your view layers instead of using actual the mist pass of the compositor. So I'll just give you a quick example of that. So let me just load up the file. Because I needed, like, with something, sometimes you need to break the rules to tell the story. Sometimes the story is more important, or the composition of your story is more important than the realistic concept of your scene. Yes, I know you're working with realistic shots, but even then, sometimes you need to bend some of the rules to make sure your story is clear. This is the nature of CG art. It's basically telling a story, being able to be read. If we were here to replicate reality, we could just use photographs or cinematography. But in this case, we can tell a story by breaking a little bit of the rules and using some hacks, and also save render time as well, instead of using volumetrics, for example. So here, if I am in the scene, and I need to create some depth, some quick depth. Let me just load up the other scene, which is going to be a little bit heavy. Hopefully my render, let's just free up some RAM. I'll keep this one open. Okay, we're still loading. But the general concept is, you can hack it, but I'll give you an idea. Oh, I'm kind of drunk has offered, oh, that's very nice of you. Offered a GPU. So far, my rendering time should be okay. It should be done by tomorrow morning, and I'm okay. I hope. There we go. Right, so here's my scene. Obviously, it's a complex scene. It takes about 20 seconds for it to load up into RAM, but surprisingly enough, it's still very light. It's taking 2 gigs of RAM to render. So it's not too heavy. It's relatively simple. But this isn't the actual layout of the scene. The layout is over here, in the actual part of the world. Here's the layout of the world. And as you can see, let's just hide the ground. I have one plane here. This is the first depth plane. And then I have another plane further back here, further away, to kind of bring even more depth to some things. So here's the world. If we take a closer look at the world, here's the camera. This is where I'm looking at the scene. And then here I have the actual city, or the building, over a highway. And then I have some traffic. If I press play, I have the drones, and the drones are flying past, and the lights are being animated over here. So not a lot of animation, but I use the geometry nodes, which I mentioned a couple of months ago. I'm using that overridden inside the actual scene. So I use this blue plane as kind of a very simple shader setup. Basically, it's just this. Slight emission with transparency, with a mix shader, and that's it. If I'm in Eevee, I would put alpha blend because it's less noisy. And I think in Cycles it would work in a similar way. And I just use that to kind of define what is behind what I'm supposed to look at and what is in front of what I'm supposed to look at. So that when I go into the actual shot here and run the animation a little bit and pull the camera out a little bit and turn on the render view with the scene world, just give me a second. There we go. I now have the ability to at least frame a little bit of hue contrast and value contrast between all of the buildings that is in the sunlight. With this shot, I didn't add a lot of, I guess you could say, a lot of focus. Mainly because I wanted it to feel chaotic. I wanted people to see the richness at the end of this music video, to think this is just the beginning of something extremely detailed with a lot of world building. And that's what I want you to think. That's why I wanted to keep the shot very complex and very detailed. So that's it really. That's a little hack you can use to bring out your depth. So for example, if your mist pass is not working very well, well, you can just use a single plane as a hack to kind of add some fake depth to your scene without actually any cost to your renders. Another thing you can do is using Eevee Depth as another pass. So Eevee Depth with Volumetrics is actually quite handy. So if we go inside, in this case, you're going to be using 2 renders, because I noticed that you're rendering one on cycles and the other on the concept of, you're rendering on cycles. So if we take a look at our scene management, I'm going to create, this is going to be my cycles render. And let's just delete this one. So here in my cycles render, I'm going to have a couple of cylinders like this, so that one is behind the other like that. I'm going to set the camera up so it's like this, more or less, so we can see the depth. So there's the depth. And what I'm going to do is in the cycles render here, I'm just going to switch back to my properties editor, change it to cycles, change it to GPU, go to my AOVs. I don't need the mist pass. It's okay. I'm going to call this scene cycles. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a linked copy. And in the linked copy, I'm going to call this Eevee. And I'm going to change the render engine to Eevee. And inside the render engine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize some of the collection of this data. So I'm going to put one inside here. I'm going to call this the geo data. And this collection, I'm going to call this the volume data. And I'm going to unhide the holdout layers and the pass-through layers. So in the volume data, I'm going to create a new object. And inside this object, I'm going to use a cube. And I'm just going to like orientate the cube, make it relatively big so that it's surrounding the whole world. This gives me some power. And inside the shading editor, I'm going to create a new material, delete the principled BSDF, and then add a volumetric BSDF. So in the volumetric BSDF, I can control the density just a little bit like this. Go into rendered view. Maybe I'll make it kind of a blue so it's a little bit easier to see. Maybe less intense. And then, so I have the volume data, which I'm going to make yellow, and then I have the geodata, which I'm going to make blue. And in the geodata render settings, I'm going to make it holdout. So what a holdout does means it makes it transparent. So if I go into my render settings and the file settings, film, and if you're inside Blender, and in the output settings, if you're inside Beaver Artist, I'm just going to turn on transparent. That's important. So now that I have transparent activated, this render settings is activated to Eevee, and I have my collections organized. I'm going to switch back to my cycles scene. So here's my cycles scene, and I'm going to hide the volume data from the view layer. So now I just have my normal render right here. So now after that, I'm going to create a new scene called, I'm going to copy the settings this time. This means I copy the settings of what's rendering, what's not, the dimensions, the frame rate, all of that. And I'm going to switch it back to Eevee because it's faster with the compositor. Just turn everything off because I don't need it. Go to my compositing layout, make it full screen. I'm going to click on use nodes. So in here, I have the render layers option. So I'm going to select one, which is the cycles. Sorry, let me just change the name of the scene actually, so I can make it the composite scene. So in the composite scene, what you can do is you can use the render layers node, and the render layers node can choose whichever scene you want, whichever pass you want, and with that you can composite them together on render time. So I'm going to get the cycles layer, and I'm going to get the Eevee layer. I'm just going to do a quick mix node, mix RGB, without the factor. Put that in. Plug that into here, Control Shift click to hit the viewer. If I need to see it, I select the viewer node inside the viewer panel, and I'm going to hit render. So now it's just going to render the cycles render, which is going to be a little while, I suppose. Okay, it's going to take too long. I should put a time limit. Cycles, render, advanced. The render, I want a time limit of 10 seconds. Go back, and also in the viewport, 10-second limit. No, that's the minimum sample, sorry. Time limit 10 seconds, go back to the composite, hit render. Alright, 10 seconds, we're good. And the Eevee pass. And now we have the two layers. If we take a look at one, this is the Eevee pass right here, which has been rendered. And we hit the cycles render here. So we hit render once, and it rendered both scenes at the same time, which is really nice. So now if we go to our mix layer node, we can use the alpha channel. And lo and behold, I now have the power of almost instantaneous mist pass using actual volumetrics that cast shadows and everything instead of a mist pass for no extra cost, because Eevee volumetrics is almost instantaneous if you configure it correctly. And using the compositor, you can render both scenes together. And when I move, for example, the cylinder of one scene, because the collections are linked, when I move one cylinder, it will move in the other scene as well. So you use two linked scenes, two different render engines to bring out two different techniques of volumetrics or others to bring it out. Obviously, the depth of field probably needs some work. So I'll probably render the depth of field of the volumetric pass off, possibly. But it gives you some extra flexibility without too much render cost. If, for example, the mist pass doesn't look so good, you can use something else. So there we go. Those are the 2 hacks that you can use to bring it out. The best of both worlds. That's right. So, thank you everyone for your time. We've been here for nearly an hour. Thanks for hanging out till the end. If you have another piece of art that you'd like to share, we do have a little bit of extra time to take a look at it. That's no problem. If not, well, I hope you found this useful today. I hope you also are as excited about the music videos as I am. I can't wait to share you the music playlist, hopefully late tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Going to check it out. Thanks for doing this again. I'm off. Have a good one.
Thanks, Luke. See you later.
Where you plan on posting the lo-fi links?
I will share it here in the server, and also probably on the Twitters and other things like that. Hello, Reagan. So I'll do a social bombardment as soon as they're online. I just gotta finish the videos, one step at a time, and then I'll figure out how to get it to you. But it should be on YouTube on a playlist from the artist's Twitter account. I'll also share it on my own Twitter account as well, and here in the server. You can check it out when it's released. Thank you for doing this. Some of us have much to learn, and this is great. You're welcome, Chimera. I'm kind of drunk. You're quite right when you use 2 render engines. Sometimes, for example, Cycles is very good at glass or reflections. So sometimes, for example, I've done this. I've used Eevee to do the diffuse, the lighting and everything, but I rendered the reflections with Cycles. And then I just composited the reflections back in, and it saved me a lot of time.
Just as general feedback, I really appreciate all the art explanations. I feel like at this point I know the technical end of Blender better than I know why people do things. So always hearing the explanations is cool.
Oh, good. Yeah, at the end of the day, the software is a tool, but we're doing art. So I'm glad you're finding it useful. And also, Slinc, don't be too sad. I will continue the Q&As, just in a different format, in a different community, but I will still be here. So if you're following me on Twitter or on Twitch or other areas, you can still see these events happening every week. I'm still defining when or what time and what day, and also the format. But the community of Beaver artists will be benefiting from these, and I will also probably be giving some software updates and things like that as we do the Q&As. So it's just taking a different shift, I suppose. So don't be too sad. They're not going away forever. Also, a little sneak peek. I'm thinking to call the next event, instead of the Q&A&Critique, which is a very strong word, I'll probably just call it Let's Be for Artists. And that's basically it, really. That's a sneak peek of where this is going. So don't be too sad, okay? It's just a change a little bit. And I guess, yeah, I'll just read the last couple of comments. Oh, here's a little piece of art. I'm kind of drunk. Would you like me to review this piece today, right now, before I go? All right. Got one last bonus piece by I'm kind of drunk. Last minute. For all those of you who are still here.
Very Brazilian.
Don't worry. I know I roll. That's how I roll as well. So I'm kind of drunk. Let's take a look. We got a really cute character in green and pink with 3 eyes and a little cute little mouth, tiny hands. So what's the context of this character? Tell me more.
A friend of mine posted, I'm on my cell phone, I don't have access to my computer today, but a friend of mine made a drawing, and I realized I never made a character other than the Little Prince before. So I tried to replicate it. I'll look for the reference. Just give me a second.
That's okay.
But it was mainly it's to try to convert something 2D into 3D.
Always an excellent exercise.
Let's see if I can find the reference.
I really love his eyes. His eyes is such a cool idea. It's like a ball of glass with a little sphere in the center, but it makes it look like a pupil. That's beautiful.
I'll find the reference. Let me see.
His mouth is pretty funny too. Cute. Almost looks like claymation style. So what do you guys think? Do you like this piece? Because I do.
It is cute.
He is cute. Or she.
Oh, I found the original. Let me
It.
share.
It's cute. How did you do
The
these?
design is not mine. I'm gonna send in the right channel this time.
All right, I'm keeping an eye out. I'm keeping 3 eyes out. I like your specular hotspots as well. They work quite nicely.
This is the reference.
Okay. So how long did it take you to make this little character? He's got a knife.
A couple of, I believe a couple of hours. It was a basic forced collaboration because I saw it and I liked the character and I wanted to replicate. And then I drove to her house and maybe in 2 or 3 hours, I was able to do it, including the render time.
Nice, that's Blender Royale speeds right there.
Yeah. I was in the role with the Blender Royale thing.
There you go.
And my first attempt at sculpting something.
It's great. My only recommendation right this is like, for example, a good thing to do with your Blender stuff, for example, here I have the shot, right, but it's very washed out. So for example, I recommend doing this is when you set up your composite tree to have a flexible setup, and then you go to your edit settings and you save your startup file. When you save your startup file, every new blend file that you make will already have the composite tree ready and available. So I add like a gamma, hue and saturation, brightness and contrast, the color balance, controls. I also added a vignette, a grain, lens distortion. So that that's one key thing, like you have a good render. It's just missing that, compared to the reference, it's missing that luminance pop. So notice the color here is very bright compared to the blacks. So for example, if we take this image here, and let me just save it as something first. And I'll just save it to my downloads. So if I take this, instead of using the render here, I'm going to just pull this away. I'm going to load up the downloads. Here's your image. When you create your composite trees as a default, you can quickly, instead of like when you're about to render something and you're in a hurry and you don't want to like recreate the entire tree, what you can do is you can use the actual, let's go switch to the viewer node. Go back to hue and saturation. I can like pop the saturation a little bit. It's already starting to look like the illustration already.
Oh, that's a nice trick.
I can go to my color balancing, and right now I can press the backspace key to reset my values. And notice here in the waveform, take a look at this waveform here. So here in the waveform, notice that I have a lot of values that are like stuck in the top third here. That's the actual image. But what we can do is we can take the highs and we can pop them up to the top line, at least to the top line a little bit. Or we could use the brightness and contrast controls. So for example, I'm going to use the contrast controls to bring out more contrast. And I'm going to bump the brightness a little, well, not too much. So notice that my blacks are being crunched a bit too much when it's below the red line. That's okay. But now I can bring out the whites a bit more if I want to. And I can change the middles. So I can make the middles higher or lower to bring out the color of that image so that the ranges of your light and dark here in this vector scope, or this waveform scope, is at the top line here. It's very hard to see right now, but like you can see that it's hitting the top line so that the whites are actually white or whitish, and the darks, I have them crunched a little bit below the red line, but that's okay. So that on the monitor, it looks a lot more like your reference. So if we take a look at the reference again. So here's before, here it is after. Before and after. So you save up your startup blend with the composite trees that you need to get some rough controls so that on render time, you can do these edits without needing to do it inside the viewport after you render, and then you can save this file by just hitting Alt-S. You know, file, image, save as, you know, like a normal image editor. Because you have the vector scopes that you need. Notice that it's a lot more balanced across the entire spectrum, except for the high end. And it looks a lot more like the actual original image. And if I really wanted to, I can also make it even more like the image if I just bump up even brighter. Maybe even like increase the values a little bit. And you can also like change your colors and everything. Like you can make the greens even more green or lighter green. Or you can, like, for example, here's another node that is really good called the color Hue Correction node. So let me just bring out the icon buttons. Go to color correction node. No, sorry, that's the Hue Correction node. So the Hue Correction node tells me which ones I want to be stronger. So for example, I could bring out the lightness of the green and the yellows a little bit, or drop the yellows, make them more pale. And you can kind of control which colors you want to pop out more. Maybe more light blues, yeah? And you can change the colors of your image without needing to re-render things or changing the materials without too much problem. Maybe I want more pink, right? So I make the pink stronger. And with that, you can compare your two images together to make it more how you want it to be. So that's, but a good thing is like setting up your composite tree to have these structures already built in so that you can save time and just render and you're good to go.
Can you upload a file of this compositor of the setup?
Yeah, sure.
I gotta learn compositing. It saves so much time.
Here, let me just save this file. Jace's default #1. And that's it. So my default has a left-handed layout and it's designed for beef artists. So if you're loading it in Blender, it will have this top bar as empty and it will be left-handed. If you don't want the layout, just turn off load UI. Hit open up the sidebar, turn off load UI. It also comes with some things in there. So that's it. Thank you everyone. I will finish the stream here. I will see you guys next week for the Q&A and critique number 49, the second to last one here in Arendelle server. But never fret, it will continue just in the Beef Artist community. So thanks again. I wish you guys an excellent week and an excellent weekend. I hope you enjoy the music soon.
Good.
Thank you, Dre.
Bye.